Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Well, this week I have something very interesting and not something like this that I've ever covered before, but set up now is a system that was the pinnacle of industrial design in 1990 or around late 80s, early 90s time frame. And this is not your ordinary system by any means. The speakers, obviously not your box speaker that we're typically familiar with, but these are Apogee speakers, a ribbon speaker, and a full range ribbon speaker, by the way. This is the large section here is the woofer, then there's a center section here, which is the mid-range, and then the smaller narrow section here on the outsides are the tweeter. And by any stretch of the imagination, these are not anything normal. They pushed every amp pretty much to the brink because they can get down to a 1 ohm impedance. So hardly any amp of that time frame was able to get down to that sort of welder grade level, except for Krell. Now you can see there's a couple of Krells here, different ones. There are 4 set up. You can't see them all in the frame here, but there are actually 4 different Krell amps set up to drive the speakers. Back behind me is also a Krell preamp. Not just any preamp. All of these boxes here represent 2 channels, and they went to extreme lengths to sort of make sure everything was the best and no interference across any channels. So it is actually mono. Each one of these has a power supply and a left or right channel, so they're independent. So all together you have a 2-channel preamp here. So quite extreme, and each one of these, by the way, are extremely heavy. It's not just a little tiny box. It actually has quite the heft to it. Not unlike the amps from Krell, which are all pretty much a hefty. Each one of these amps, by the way, weighs about as much as I do. The large ones on the end, I think it's the KRS-200, are extremely heavy. They're roughly around 180 pounds, I believe, which is more than I weigh. So I took some good help from a couple of great guys, Logan and Josh, who came over and spent quality time with me helping lug these things around, because they're the amps. I do have the crates for the largest ones here, and there are boxes for the smaller ones, but they're extremely heavy, and they came over and helped me lift them. The speakers, while they might look light and able to move them around by yourself, they look similar to the Carver Amazing. They are not anything like the Carver Amazing. These are extremely heavy. I think they're around 190 pounds each. So it is filled with magnets, and it is extremely heavy. So they are hard to accommodate by yourself. I will tell you that if you ever do run across a set of these, the one thing we figured out is that they have stands, sort of a T-shaped stand to mount them on. If you're going to do that, turn them on their sides, mount the stands, and then you'll be able to stand them up. It took us a few minutes to figure that out, but once we did, it was much easier to get them going here. But everything here, there's about, I don't know, I think there's about 1 ton of weight close to it between all of the amps and the speakers and even the preamps, which again are pretty hefty. Back here in the back is, so the speakers are called the Apogee Diva. The Diva is the model number, which is a full range speaker. And for the Diva and the Duetta, and I think one more model, they made an electronic crossover that you could pair with them as well. And that's what this is, a power supply and crossover here separately. And behind each speaker is also the sort of physical crossover. This electronic crossover and the physical crossover is behind them. Definitely not the type of gear that I have typically showcased on the channel. And these represented quite the investment back in the 90s. Altogether, I believe it would have cost somewhere around $50,000 to $60,000 MSRP to put this system together. I think that equates to around $140,000 today in current money. And probably, even though that was very expensive back then, some of the pricing I've seen for some current high-end exotic gear goes up into the hundreds of thousands now. So probably would be considered still quite the bargain if this was available today. So these are quite extreme, comparatively speaking, to what I typically cover in the form of a receiver and some AR speakers or some Jensen speakers, or some other model that I've typically covered on this channel. These were quite a departure from, let's say, the high efficiency speakers with a small tube amp. These required amplifiers that go into, they sort of double their power of Class A power as the impedance gets lowered. So I think the KRS-200s, I think they start out at 400 watts at 8 ohm, and then they go up to about 1600 watts per channel at 1 ohm. And I'll confirm that and put it up on in the video here if I got that grossly incorrect. But so they needed that kind of power to really make them sing. And while we're sort of familiar with things like warming up tube amps, it's the same thing for this level of amplifier. You'll want to turn them on and let them warm up for about 30 minutes. And they don't have all those heat sinks there because they're just for looks. They actually need them. It's all Class A power here, so they generate a lot of heat. So they need all those fins, which makes them very challenging. They're heavy and they're like porcupines trying to pick these things up. So it makes it quite the challenge. They've got some extremely robust handles sort of on the front and back to be able to grab them. But believe me, one slip and it can definitely hurt you, because I have the only scar on my body on my shin here where trying to put one in a box, fell over and got me right on the shin. It was not a fun experience, I can tell you. Other interesting points about amps like these, as I mentioned, they're Class A. They take a lot of power. So it is recommended that each amp also have its own dedicated circuit. I think it's a 20 amp circuit. So I do have 3 circuits on this wall, and I set it up that way expecting at some point I would need access, but I really need 4. To completely have set up this entire system, there was also a 5th amp, which I did not set up, to run the additional subwoofers. Now, these are the Divas, they are full range, but there were and are some subwoofers, an Apogee subwoofer 10s, that were also part of this entire system. So an additional amp could have been placed here just to run the separate subwoofers. So quite a configuration if you wanted to certainly accommodate this the right way. If you're going to spend, 50, 60,000 back then, you would have set aside a little more money to have some more outlets and circuits run to your audio room. It would have been part of the expense. So something to think about if you ever decided to tackle something like these. It takes quite the configuration of your room in advance of being able to set these up. What a system. Unfortunately, this system is for one, it is for sale, and it does, all of the amps seem to be working fine. The speakers actually are working, but there is a problem with this crossover. I was having an issue getting output on the low end side, the woofer side. So I couldn't get it to perform completely like it should be. Not sure what that, if that's an internal issue, I don't know. There are some configurations that you have to go through depending on which speaker you want to use them with. You cannot use this just on any of the Apogee speakers. You do have to set it up internally for the Diva, the Duetta, and the other one that it will support. So I don't know what, maybe something's gone wrong internally. That's an easy fix or not, I don't know. Everything here is original from its, it has not been reconditioned or rebuilt in any form. None of the amps or the speakers or the preamp has been rebuilt in any form that I'm aware of. So I have to assume everything is all original. And here it is. Unfortunately, I wish I could just tell you about the experience, and honestly, I just can't. So until I was able to get things up and running, which was only temporarily, because even though I have 3 circuits on this wall, I had to share one circuit with the smaller amps here in the middle, they don't draw as much current as the external outside amps do. But I was able to at least confirm that the drivers are working. I only did it at low volume just to make, because I'm a bit concerned about this this crossover. So the drivers do seem to be working. However, I can't confirm the clarity, you know, if they're working as efficiently as they should. I suspect they're going to need to be rebuilt and serviced by a qualified technician, along with the amplifiers. So when you do reach out, or if you're interested in reaching out, I have tried to price things with that in mind. So this is it. What an amazing bit of industrial design, and you know, money was no object, power was no object, energy was no object. It's whatever it took to eke out, you know, the best sound possible out of a ribbon speaker, and just a tour de force of just physicality. And money was part of that equation, but you know, no expense on whatever it took to eke as much you know, musicality and music information out of this configuration. So quite a departure, you know, from setting up something as on the opposite end of the spectrum, efficient like Klipschorns, which need 2 or 3 or 4 watts, and small tube amps, you know, compared to this, which require 4 circuits of power and you know, a whole ton, a literal ton of gear to set up a system. So you know, quite a difference, you know, in the spectrum. That's it at the moment. I just thought I'd put this little video together and give you guys some insight into what was sort of the high-end market in the late 80s, early 90s time frame. So you get an idea of what things look like and what they cost a little bit of. Well, I guess that'll do it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, see you next time.